We kind of go where we go. So thanks for agreeing to do this.
Sure.
So you've been with Sierra Ventures for a while, and did you actually start with partners or come in later?
Yeah, so the firm was started in 1982.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
And so I joined in 2002.
Okay.
And so, but we've kind of been, I joined as a partner, but not one of the managing directors, and then I think in 2006 or 7 became an MD, but then pretty much the three of us are now running the firm since 2012.
Yeah. And what's the current mission for the firm?
You know, it's
I don't know if it's changed or evolved.
It's evolved in terms of the tactics. The strategy is mostly the same. Look, at the end of the day, you have to make entrepreneurs successful. Mm-hmm. And if they're successful, then we're successful and our investors are successful. So the core nucleus of this is making entrepreneurs successful. And if you can do that, then we benefit from it, and then our investors benefit from it. And so that's the food chain.
Yeah. And is there, from a tactics perspective, without giving away any state secrets, what is it that you think makes you guys unique in terms of how you do that?
So I think what's changed, to your question, is that the market has changed, right? So I think if you look at the startup community now, companies and entrepreneurs can start with $500,000 and host it on the cloud and get something going so the top of the funnel in terms of the number of companies has changed dramatically, right? And so I think you have to adapt. So what we did 15 years ago is not what you can do today. What we did 5 years ago is probably not what we can do today.
Wow.
And so I think the venture business is fairly dynamic, and like anything else, you have to adapt to it. And so for us, I think that's probably, as we look at probably the last 7 years since we've, 2012, which was the fund that the three of us raised together, that's probably the biggest change, is the top of the funnel is much, much wider. If you think about things like Y Combinator and all these incubators, a lot more companies being started.
Are lower.
Yeah, that's right. And so I think that's probably the single biggest difference there. So you have to adapt.
In some ways, it's more to sift through then in terms of who's going to be a good fit and vice versa.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Interesting. Yeah. What do you have a particular role in that that's different, or did the three of you really have kind of shared across the board?
Yeah, we're equal partners.
Okay.
That's the beauty of the venture
rare.
model and partnership.
Yeah.
It's just, so we all have our own specialization and spaces that we care about, but I think at the end of the day, even the decision-making process internally is kind of, there's no unanimous vote required, and that's the thing that's in venture, it's like you don't want to be the least common denominator, right? If I don't understand the space, it means I don't like the deal. That's exactly the wrong approach you take. So I think a decision-making process is fairly, it's not unanimous. Like everybody has to kind of agree on something. But if I strongly disagree, then it's Tim's job to explain to me why, he still wants to do the deal.
He's got to make the case.
Right, he's got to make the case.
Yeah.
And I might still not agree with him, but we trust each other enough to kind of say, you can still go do that.
Yeah, that sounds like a really healthy discipline to have.
Yeah,
where you have
and you have to have a conviction at the end of the day, right? I mean, to be a good venture investor, you have to have conviction, right? So, and that's, if I think back, even when I started in 2002, my first investment I ever made was, the bubble had burst. It was 2002.
Tough time.
And people were like, well, why are you joining the venture business, right?
Right.
And they said, take a year to figure out, when you figure out the venture business, right? And I've been at Sierra about 10 days, 2 weeks maybe, and I ran into this guy at a security trade show. I don't know if I told you the story.
No,
Marty, and literally he asked me, security was one of those spaces where the bubble had burst. Nobody was investing in security. This conference, RSA, which is the mother lode of all security stuff.
Yeah.
like there must have been 300 people or 500 people in there, which now there are 50,000.
I was going to say that.
Right? And
tiny.
so yeah, but 30 of them were chasing this guy around trying to get his autograph. And I'm like, I wonder what he does. So I just followed him around, and so I finally got to him he was grabbing a coffee, and I said, so should I get your autograph? And he goes, well, it depends on what you do, right? And so he turns out he had an open source network security company, 2 million downloads of his software.
Wow.
And at the time nobody knew what open source was, right? And so for me, and I'm digressing, but this is what the story, right, at the end of the day. Right.
It, yeah.
And so he asked me, what do you do? And I said, venture capital. He goes, you guys suck. It's like, it literally was, he'd been trying to raise money for 2 months.
Kind of like right there with lawyers.
Right. And it literally was like he had been trying to raise money for 2 months. And people asked, well, they love the story, I love what you're doing.
Yeah.
How much revenue do you have? And then he'd say, none, I need some money to go sell some product. And then they were like, oh, come back when you have revenue.
Because we got burned in the dot-com bust.
And I said, hey, don't judge me. I've been doing this for 2 weeks. Come on in. Brought him in. My partners thought I was crazy, right? It was like, what are you doing? We told you $1 million in revenue per quarter, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, guys, you brought me here for a reason. Do you know how to spell open source? Do you know how to spell security? And they were like, okay, fine. Go hang yourself. But that's part of like having conviction, having some kind of thought leadership, I think, to some extent, right?
Yeah.
And so, anyway, company went public in 4 years, and Cisco bought them for $3 billion. So,
good job, Bart.
No. It was all about. It's not about bragging. It's about.
I know
it's the conviction of like.
Yes.
And sometimes over time, you start losing that risk taking.
Yes.
That's in your questions here. One of the things it's like. To me, it's that ability or the willingness to take risk. And I think if you do it, sometimes you've got to make sure you don't lose that willingness to take risk.
And how do you keep that?
Long story to simple.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. No, I'm clapping in part for you, but also for him.
Yeah.
Because it's like, how frustrating that must have been to feel like no one's getting this.
I showed up. So I read the guy the term sheet. I show up. The company is based in Columbia, Maryland, right? Somewhere between DC and Baltimore.
Yeah.
I show up, MapQuest days. I show up. I have a printout of his address.
Yes.
And it's his mom's house. And I ring the doorbell. And it's like, woman opens the door and she's like, so yes, how can I help you? And I'm like, here to see Marty. And she shuts the door and she's like, Marty, there's this guy here to see you. And so it was that extreme kind of,
wow.
So you still have to have like conviction to go, even after that, okay, should I really wire him the money or not?
Right, you're like,
right.
Ooh.
But, that's what,
do you have a passport?
Yeah.
Wow.
But, he has,
Are you still in touch today?
Oh, yeah. So.
That's awesome. That's really great. I love that. So tell me more about risk taking. Were you thinking of that as advice for entrepreneurs or part of like a mindset, skill set, behavior, or where did that fit in for you?
Yeah. So I think, so in terms of risk taking, look, the entrepreneurs always have that. You can't be an entrepreneur without the willingness to take risk, right? So I think what we find is like there are two sets, and a lot of profiles for entrepreneurs, but there's the first set which they have nothing to lose. Right. You're straight out of school, you're early, you don't have anything to worry about, that's it, right?
Right.
And so it's like, roll the dice, that's fantastic. And then the other end of the spectrum are people who've been successful before and have, plenty of money, they've got, and
so they also have nothing to lose.
They can go long on that stuff, right? It's that middle ground, which is like, I have a couple kids at college, I have this, I have that, I really need a mortgage and all this stuff I need. And that's where it's the trickier part of the mindset of taking risks. But there are a lot of things we can kind of go through in terms of the mindset. And I think for me the learnings, really one of my business school classmates was the guy who runs AWS, Amazon Web Services, Andy Jassy, and he's like phenomenal in terms of the way he talks about it. But we can drill down into the questions around that.
Yeah. So where did you go to school?
I did a lot of school.
I know you went to school. Did you go to
So
school in India?
I did my undergrad in India.
Right.
Right.